But what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to do two birds with one stone. I'm going to hop on the 3x3 trend that's going around right now. So I don't know if you guys know what that is, but a bunch of Twitch streamers slash YouTubers or whatever have posted what they call just the games that shape them. They have all different names for it, but it's the games that shape me, and it's a 3x3 grid of the games that kind of they're either their favorite games or the games that really influenced them as they grew up and influenced their tastes. So may not even necessarily be the best games they've played, but the most important games they've played. So I figured instead of just hopping right into the game, I'd chat with you guys for a little bit about what my 3x3 square looks like. Why don't we just start talking? Why don't we start talking about the games that meant a lot to me? Okay, so we have the secret weapon of any streamer, MS Paint, because I don't know how to use Photoshop. So we're just going to just slum it up here, guys, and we're going to use some MS Paint. All right, so Loser Corner, you're in the chat. Why don't we get one of the obvious games out of the way here? What do you think is an obvious game that would go in my 3x3 square, huh? Alright, can I fit it in the square nice and snug here? There you go, it's a little bit stretched, but whatever. Ultimate Doom. Obviously, Doom. Doom was the game that I would actually credit as the game that got me into games. Like, you know, the NES games that I played originally when I was young were great and everything, and obviously fun. But, like, very few games hooked me the way that Doom did. And the funny thing is like I was hooked before I was even allowed to play this game, because Dad used to play this when I was like six, something like that. When I was like 6 or 7, my dad would play this, and it would piss my mom off that he would let us watch him play this game because it was too violent. But we used to watch Dad play this, and it was so cool. Like, the game was so cool to me. When I watched him play, like, I couldn't wait to play it. And finally, when Dad let us play it, I don't know how old we were, like 11 or something. So we like watched him play it for 4 years. But it was just so much fun watching him play, and then playing it myself, and playing Doom 2, and playing all the custom WADs. I just loved it. And I mean, like, even now, obviously, with the fact I stream Doom and have a lot of fun with Doom, Doom is just a fantastically fun game. Like, I don't know of another game that, as old as it, that I can constantly just hop back into and almost enjoy every minute of it. And the modding community is so great, and they make all these fantastic WADs for it, which obviously is what's helping keep this game alive as much as it is. It's a perfect blend of unrealism but fun. So many shooters today try to be like realistic, and then they're not nearly as fun. So I think I much more enjoy like this sort of like arcade shooting or arena shooting that is Doom, right? Just so little I had to care about. Don't got to care about reloading. Just go in there and blow everything away. And that's what I loved about Doom 2016. It tried to recapture that feeling of just running in and blowing everything up. Do you guys want to take a guess at what my second game would be? Quake Episode 4. Yeah, go fuck yourself. There it is. Now, barring the fact that World of Warcraft is, and Blizzard in general are not in people's good graces right now. The thing about World of Warcraft, and it's the problem that Classic can't really emulate this at all. But the actual experience of playing World of Warcraft when it first came out, when the game wasn't already solved, when there wasn't as much emphasis on, you know, speed of getting things done and optimizations and shit like that. Playing this game, despite all its time sinks, despite some of its really outdated gameplay. Well, I mean, it wasn't really outdated then, but it's outdated gameplay. My best gaming memories are playing this game. And it's such a bummer to see the game decrease in quality the way that it did. And then I was excited as everybody else to play Classic and Classic BC and everything like that. But unfortunately, you can't really capture that original feeling because the game is solved. Because the player base of today is different than the player base of yesteryear, right? But this was just so much fun. It was my first MMO and my only MMO, actually. And it was so cool. Like, I made friends with people in this game that I still talk to off and on today, even though we haven't played this game together in forever. And like I said, my favorite gaming memories are in here. My guild that I actually ended up running was just a band of absolute misfits who could barely coordinate enough to defeat any bosses in a raid dungeon. But I absolutely loved the feeling of going in with them and trying to beat bosses. And there was a time eventually in the third expansion, Cataclysm, where we actually defeated the final boss of the expansion clean. Right? Not waiting until 2 expansions later and going back and killing him later. We killed him clean in that expansion. And that collective experience and excitement of us all of us defeating that boss together. My dad was there. He was part of the group. Right? So to have that experience with a member of my family was amazing. Like, we were so hyped. I've never gotten that feeling of hype from another game since. And that is a bit of a drag, right? That there's games that were made better, objectively more fun, but they can't capture that teamwork epicness, I guess, of World of Warcraft. It's just the memories that I made in the game are just keep me from ever hating it, despite what it's turned into. It's so hard to have fun in this game the way that I did years ago. Like, it's not even hard. It's impossible to have fun the way that I used to. So I have to put it on this list because it did shape me, and it was one of the greatest experiences in gaming that I've ever had, was playing this game. So it has to go on this list. Even though this is not a game I would recommend anybody play now. Alright, let's mix it up with something a little bit more recent. It's still, like, old. Ish. But more recent than these two. This is the game that launched 1,000 YouTube careers. There it is. So many YouTube careers launched by this game. Okay, Amnesia. So, if you guys have not played Amnesia and don't know what it is, it's actually a horror game that was released 2012, somewhere around there. And I'm someone who loves horror. I love horror movies, I love horror games. I don't get scared very often, mind you, or like at all for the most part. The closest I probably ever come is this game. And I just love this game for it daring to do something different, because when it came to horror, the trend for years before Amnesia was survival horror. Any horror game that came out had to have some sort of like survival mechanic where like you shoot zombies or you actually it was mostly shooting zombies. That's actually the whole horror genre was shooting zombies. So to have a game come out where there was no combat, you could not fight off any of the things that could kill you. Your only option was to run. And it was a game that gave me such like a tenseness. Like, my butthole was clenched the whole time playing this game. So that the fact that Amnesia was eventually made with its absolutely spooky atmosphere, it's really like horrific looking monsters, but no way to defend yourself, and running was the only option. And I remember there's one scene in the game, spoilers for like a 10-year-old game, there's a point in the game where you're running from this like water monster that you can't see, and there's a point where there's no way to get away from it. Previously in the game, you would get on top of a box or something that was in the water and it couldn't catch you. So you're kind of playing like a cat and mouse game with it. But in this particular sequence, you had no option but to run. So you ran, and there was doors in your way that you had to open and try to shut behind you to slow the monster down. And the entire time I'm running, you don't want to look back because you don't want to see how close that thing is. I had this such tense feeling because I felt like the monster was like right there behind me. And that kind of feeling, that tense like feeling that Amnesia gave me was something I had never been able to experience before, and I've been kind of chasing that feeling ever since, because Amnesia's sequels didn't really do that. So I had to put this on the list because it's still, to me, and I've played horror games or watched people play horror games on YouTube since, and nothing has actually come close, I think, to this game, to giving me that sort of horror vibe that I look for when I'm playing a horror game. Alright. So my next one. Good old Half-Life 2. So, I'm assuming everybody's heard of the Half-Life franchise. Like, come on, it was like the biggest deal in PC video game like history. And I gotta say that when it came to first person shooters, the original Half-Life just knocked almost every other FPS out of the park. Like, Doom is like dumb fun when you compare it to Half-Life 2 the original Half-Life, and the original Half-Life was just an experience in FPS games. Finally, when I did play Half-Life 2, holy shit how much fun it was. I could not get over how good a game Half-Life 2 was. No FPS that came before that could stand up to it, and there's so many FPSs that have come out since that can't stand up to this game. Now, that doesn't mean Half-Life 2 doesn't have some outdated mechanics. The enemy AI is a little bit bonkers compared to nowadays, and the actual textures are a little bit dated. But no game and no FPS has like melded story and just fast-paced FPS gameplay so well before. And the world that it built was amazing because it didn't explain everything to you, right? You just wake up, you're in this fucked up dystopian future, rolled over by like an alien race you don't know anything about. Everyone talks to you, the protagonist, as if you know what's going on, but you've been like stasis for like 20 fucking years or whatever it is. So you're just stumbling through like, yeah, I know what you're all talking about. So the game doesn't like explain and give you history lessons. It lets you try to fill in the blanks yourself, and you're probably wrong. Like, from whatever was in the head of the writers. And shifted tones. That was the thing that was crazy to me, how it shifted tones. How it went from, dystopian future to straight up horror game. Ravenholm is the most fucked up level I've ever played in an FPS. It's terrifying. But so fun. With the gravity gun, which was the best weapon ever created in a game, okay? No other weapon in any FPS or any game ever lets me kill people with toilets, alright? I could kill bitches by pulling a toilet off the wall and throw it in their face. There will never be, I think, a game that ever grabs me the way that Half-Life 2 did, completely. When you look at what's up here right now, the game I'm probably going to put here is going to confuse the living shit out of everybody. Boom. Best game on the SNES. Fight me. Super Mario RPG. This is the most fun I've had playing a game. Like, this game's story is not deep. This is the most basic-ass story you can probably put into a game and still call it an RPG. But in terms of just raw fun, that game right there trumps everything on the Super Nintendo. Don't care. Fight me. Because when you think of an RPG, you say, okay, I'm going to cast this spell on that enemy. And then your character will cast that spell on that enemy. But that's all it is. You say, do this, do it here. Right? And the game takes care of the rest. Super Mario RPG makes you part of the combat with the timed hits, with the timed defenses. You don't just sit there and wait for your turn. You don't sit there and just do something and sit back. You are actively playing the game in combat, which I think was amazing. And all other RPGs, I think, didn't want to do that, because once our Super Mario RPG did it, it seemed childish. I don't know. It wasn't until, like, South Park Stick of Truth came out that I think I remember seeing anything like that again. And the hidden stuff is what I think also makes this game special. Because I'm actually watching the Game Grumps. The Game Grumps are actually playing this game for the first time. As someone who's never actually watched somebody play Super Mario RPG from scratch, without me there telling them to where the cool shit was, it's amazing how much it's easy to miss in this game when you're just playing through it and not, like, exploring. But when you explore, there's so many cool things to find. There's a fucking hidden casino in this game. Okay? A casino. But it requires you to do a dungeon, go past the dungeon. It requires you to go past the dungeon, come back later, go to a specific floor where there's a dude where if you beat him at a certain game 12 times, he will give you the key to go to the casino, which is still hidden and you have to find it. And you have to beat a dude in there at a game 100 times and he gives you an overpowered item. Right? That was some bullshit, but when you found it and experienced it, holy shit was it cool. And there's even, like, little tiny fun things in it. You could go to a town where you can stay in a honeymoon suite, but the game lets you turn the light off and spend another night without leaving the room. But so you just can keep going to sleep. And I did this. I don't know why I did this when I first played it, but I thought it was funny that I could just go to bed without paying for the room. Little did I know that when Mario went back downstairs, I did have to pay for the room, and I didn't have enough coins, and I had to do a bellhop minigame in order to continue the game because I had to work off my debt. Alright, next game. Mass Effect 2. So Mass Effect 2 was a super big surprise to me. And it was a super big surprise because I played Mass Effect 1, and it took me a little while to play it. Like, a lot of people were playing Mass Effect, and I just never played it. But when I finally did play Mass Effect, which was like in 2014 or something like that, so the game was already like 6 years old or something. I absolutely loved it, and it was flawed, and like Jay said, had a lot of copy and paste side quests, which is obviously not great. I absolutely loved the original Mass Effect. I thought it had a fantastic story. The characters were superbly written. I just loved the game. But I remember chatting with somebody at work while I was playing Mass Effect, and he said, so you haven't played 2 yet? And I said, no. And he's like, you're going to love Mass Effect, but you are going to absolutely love Mass Effect 2. To the point that you're actually going to dislike Mass Effect 1 comparatively. Because Mass Effect 2, it's initially a little bit put off when I first got into the game, because the mechanics were changed a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. Like the basic gun and run and spell casting were like the same sort of system, but the way you took cover, the fact you had to reload your gun all of a sudden, they put a reload mechanic back into the game when the first game didn't have a reload mechanic. I thought was kind of weird, and it stripped down some of the RPG elements, because in the first game you could take a weapon and customize it in every which way, which was not something you could do in the second one. The second one, you picked up a weapon and you went with it. So I was at first a little bit put off. I was like, whoa, it looks like they're trying to dumb this game down. But when you get into this game, The thing that grabs you with Mass Effect 2 is it's probably the best written characters in any video game. There's been a lot of games that I've played that have had fantastic stories with fantastic characters. The cast of characters in Mass Effect 2 is probably the closest to a perfect cast of characters I've ever played in a game. And that's a testament to how well BioWare's writers were at this time. Not now. At that time, the writing ability that they had at that company was absolutely out of this world. And it's such a fondly remembered game because of those characters. And besides the romanceable characters, like there's a character of Garrus who he was my best friend. Like by the time I finished the game, I was like, my real life best friends don't compare to how cool of a best friend Garrus is. Like they simply had built you this character that was going to be his best friend. No matter what you did, however you played your main character, Garrus became like your supportive friend. So no matter what, he was like the one character that you always felt like, I can talk to this guy. This guy gets me. He was my best friend. I took him everywhere. I couldn't romance him because I played as male shepherd, and you can only romance him as female shepherd. Didn't care. Took him everywhere. He was my best friend, right? And the quality of the writing made it so that when I played this game, this is probably the last game I played where I played it and couldn't put it down. It was like a fantastic book where once you start reading, you can't put it down. That's how I felt playing this game, which sucked because I had a job at the time. Just like as much as the gameplay was not super deep, I just couldn't wait to finish a mission and see where the story took me. And yes, Mass Effect 3 it ended on a really low note compared to what this game set up. But even if you just played this and didn't play 3, I think people would enjoy this game's story so goddamn much. To have a game that you could really affect the next game the way you played this. So if you played Mass Effect, decisions that you made carry over into this game. But one slight disappointment I had was a lot of the decisions you make didn't bear a huge effect on this game. Like the big decision that you make at the end of the first game, which is to save a group of people or not save a very important group. It's politicians. To save a group of politicians or not save a group of politicians. I saved them and they were only in one scene of this second game. So 1 to 2 didn't really have a lot of carryover. But 2 to 3, you could affect so much going into 3 to the point that you have a character list, your party is something like 12 characters. You could basically have up to 10 of them die and not show up in the third game, and that would all have consequences. Right? Like the last mission of Mass Effect 2 is probably the best last mission of any game I've ever played. They said Mass Effect 3 kind of ended the series on a bit of a low note, but this game here, I would highly recommend to anybody who loves story and dialogue and characters in a game. Right? This one is the one I would recommend. Here we go. Alright. So, Riven. So here's the thing. Myst is obviously a fantastic game. If any of you who watch this later don't know what Myst is, A, I pity you. B, go play Myst. There's 7,000 versions of it on Steam. Myst was the game, when I credit Doom as the game that got me into just games, Myst was the game that got me so interested in how games are made. I never looked at Doom and was like, man, how did they make this? Myst was the game that made me go, what the hell did they do to get this to happen? And watching documentaries and interviews about how Myst was made is the most fascinating thing I think I've ever listened to when it comes to game development. In retrospect, as great as Myst was, playing Riven to me there was something about Riven that transcended Myst in my eyes. And I think it was technically the world building of Riven was better than what it was in Myst. The downside of Myst was Myst had, and this is something even one of its creators, Robin Miller, admits, Myst had a lot of what you would call incidental puzzles. There was a joke that I watched one group of people play through Myst and Riven, and one of them, who was a game designer, said he likes to imagine how garbage would it be to live in the world that's been created here. Walk around in the worlds of Myst, as beautiful as they are, would be garbage. Like, hey, I want to go to this place. Let me make this tree grow up and down before I can get in and out. And the Channelwood age is the only age where I can say, like, even if this has been garbage to live in, at least all the puzzles in the world are built that way because that's the way the world is built. The Channelwood age would be that if you got dropped in a place with a bunch of machinery, you didn't know how to work, and there was no labels. Like, if I dropped labels around Channelwood about what stuff was, you'd be able to no problem navigate the world. Riven had such great world building, and 80% of the puzzles were just built into the world itself and had a reason to exist. The final puzzle of Riven, which I will agree was an absolute load of bullshit, that I feel I was just too young to understand it. I couldn't put the pieces together. I absolutely loved the way that the world was put together. It was so amazing. It was so great looking. And when you look back on it now, even now, the graphics in that game stand up. Because it wasn't a walk around 3D world, it was point and click. So they had lighting effects that you didn't see in a game until years later because they were all technically static images. Walking, even as frustrating as Riven was to me because I was young and couldn't figure out the puzzles and the internet didn't exist, the world of Riven was so amazing to me. And even just walking around Riven just filled me with this sense of, like, foreboding but awe at the same time. Myst fills you with a sense of awe, but all of its like worlds are kind of like romantic architecture. But Riven was meant to look used and broken in and damaged and bleak, right? Like, it was, to me, it's what a sequel should be, taking the original and what was great about it and building upon it. So I actually, to the argument of many people, feel Riven is a better game than Myst. Alright, so this game, not Warcraft 3, but in the same vein, Starcraft. My history of this game was once again started by my older brother, who, I'm guessing when he was at school, and you borrowed the CD from one of your friends to play this, and kind of like when I first saw him play Myst, I had never seen anything like it before. I'm like, hang on, you gotta control each individual piece and make it do things and research stuff at these buildings, and what is this? Like, I had never seen an RTS before. Despite the fact I had never played anything like it before, I got so hooked, even though I initially sucked at it, like I'm pretty sure most people did when they first played it. But back then, where I had never played an RTS, the game felt so much more challenging. And I remember finishing the first episode, which was the Terran episode, and I was on cloud 9 because I managed to beat Mission 10 of Episode 1. It was just so much fun, so great. And this was the first game I actually started making custom maps for. Like, that's how much I loved this game when I was playing it. I was like, I actually want to try making custom maps for this. So not only was the game really fun, was something different, something that I still to this day love going back and playing every once in a while, because of how much fun it is. It was the first game that really made me go, can I make custom stuff? Alright, now here's the thing. What do I put here? I would probably put it down between these two games. Mega Man X, Baldur's Gate 2. I think it's this. I think I gotta go with Baldur's Gate 2. Again, this went to show how much BioWare and like Black Isle were just so good at crafting RPGs. The actual story and the way that your party members interact with each other, and I think it was one of the first games they built where you could romance other characters, and I love the way that the characters were incorporated into it. A perfect blend of challenge and story writing. Well, this was a very, very good game. But when I look at all of these games here that I have in my top 9, all of these are games that I have definitely said, I want to go back and replay these right now. But yeah, maybe I'll do a part 2 and talk about some other games later. Because, I mean, I could probably fill up another one of these 3x3s. But yeah, so thanks everybody for watching. I loved having you guys here. I just love talking about games. Talking about games is just awesome. But yeah, with that, I'm taking off for the night. Bye-bye.